Hi everyone, on behalf of Linda, Sertan, myself and the entire SERVSIG community, welcome. Today is the fourth day and the fourth episode of the 2020 SERVSIG Awards show. We will reveal the 2020 Christopher Lovelock Career Contributions Award winner.
First, we'd like to start by thanking our international committee members, the chair, Jochen Wirtz, and the members, Delal, Hannah, Mark, and Volker. Thank you for your work for this important award.
Now let's hear from Jochen, where he announces the winner of this very prestigious award.
It is my great pleasure to introduce the winner of the 2020 Christopher Lovelock Career Contribution Award. The selection committee diligently worked through 16 nominations with many excellent candidates. However, one candidate stood out and was unanimously chosen. He has been one of the most significant and impactful contributors to the service discipline for over 20 years and was chosen for many reasons. First, he is a true service guy and spends the majority of his time with the community. As put by one committee member, it is hard to surpass him given his activity within the service discipline. He is at every service conference. Also, on the editorial boards of many of our community's journals, he has been on many committees and generously contributes to the service community. He has delivered over 350 presentations, including 15 keynotes, at academic conferences, and virtually all of his presentations focus on service. And he hosted the Frontiers in Service Conference in 2009. Second, his research has had tremendous impact with over 58,000 citations on Google Scholar, 14 publications with more than 1,000 citations each, and he is on the Web of Science's most cited researcher list, which includes the top 1% of all economics and business scholars globally for 6 consecutive years from 2014 to 2019. Notably, he is the only marketing professor other than the late Bob Lush who was listed more than twice. Third, he put service on the map and helped to raise service as a topic in the general marketing community and beyond. Through a series of high-impact articles, he changed the understanding of the meaning of service for many scholars. For his research on service, he received twice the Shelby D. Hunt Harold H. Maynard Award and the AMA Foundation Jagdish Sheth Award for contributions to marketing theory. Finally, whereas marketing and service research is famous for importing theory from other disciplines, it is extremely rare that service and marketing theory is exported to other disciplines. The award winner's development of the service-dominant logic has been used in virtually all other business disciplines and is in a surprising number of non-business fields, including civil engineering, healthcare, forestry, education, information systems, philosophy, and the arts. Let's congratulate the 2020 Christopher Lovelock Career Contribution Award winner, Steve Vargo. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to now interview the winner of the 2020 Christopher Lovelock Career Contribution Award, Steve Vargo. Steve, good day and my heartiest congratulations to winning this award.
Thank you very much. I'm of course delighted and thrilled.
Yeah. Steve, we are curious and have a few questions for you. First, what does winning this award mean to you?
Well, first, thanks to you and to the committee for this award. It means a lot to me. I'm sure in much the same way that it did to you last year and has to everybody before that. It's been extremely gratifying and confirming of career activities and certainly terribly welcome, particularly because it comes from the community with which I identify. And so it's particularly pleasing. I'm sure with you, it was also particularly pleasing because it's the Lovelock Award and you had worked a lot with Chris on books and other things. For me, I have my own set of reasons that's particularly rewarding. A lot of people don't know it, but I really started in a marketing Ph.D. as a non-traditional student after a pretty extended career in entrepreneurial activities. And so I found coming in at a fairly late age, or actually going out after I finished at a fairly late age and didn't kind of fit the mold of the typical PhD student, I had some trouble getting taken seriously and found that it was a little bit hard for me to get a good research position, not too hard to get a position in a teaching school or a fairly somewhat balanced school, and also not hard for me to get a position as a visitor. So somewhere along the way, I just made a decision to stay a visitor so I could stay focused at my research and not get so bogged down in teaching. And I actually did that for about 8 years. And what kept me going was I thought I had something to contribute and it was important to me. And so it wasn't until after the 2004 JM that I sort of had rebranded myself and people started taking me seriously, and that I took a tenure track job, the first one I had. At one point didn't think I probably would ever be tenured, but went in at the University of Hawaii as an untenured associate. So I never actually had a job as a tenure track assistant professor. But because of that, because I'd sort of taken a non-traditional approach to all of this and had to fight off some self-doubt and some doubt from others, this is probably particularly exciting to me because it confirms that whole path and all that effort was really worthwhile.
Oh, Steve, that's a wonderful story. And today, everyone takes you seriously. You're tenured and you made an enormous contribution. I mean, to a large degree, you won this award because of your breakthrough work on the SD logic. Now, in a nutshell, how would you explain SD logic to a young service researcher or to a practitioner?
Well, SD logic on the surface is actually pretty easy to explain. It really is just a theoretical framework, a mental model or a mindset, if you will, a lens for seeing economic activity in a different way. We've been taught that economic activity is about goods for goods or goods for money. And what SD logic says is that's really a little bit myopic and short-sighted, that economic activity is really about service for service exchange. That service in this case is not a type of good, it's just a process of using your resources like knowledge and skills for someone else's benefit, pretty much a dictionary definition of what service is. And that the idea is I'll do something for you and in return you do something for me. I'll provide you some service, you provide me some service, and sometimes we do that through goods, but goods are delivery mechanisms. What happens when we make that change in mental model is we begin to see that for those resources to be useful to someone, they have to be integrated with other resources. And we get those resources from market-facing public and private sources. And to understand that, we really have to zoom out and understand that value creation is a co-created affair. It's not something that's created by one party and delivered to another. It's very interactive, it's very dynamic, it's very systemic. And as we zoom out more, we start to see the other players and the roles that they play. And we see that there's coordinating mechanisms, which we call institutions, norms, rules, regulations, signs, symbols, things that help us in in doing this exchange of service and coordinating this value co-creation process. And as we sort of look at what forms out of there, we see service ecosystems, groups of people co-creating value with each other, often even not knowing that they're doing that, all tied together by institutions that they share. It's really a pretty simple picture. I covered a lot of territory there, but what it really says is it's a dynamic model of resource integrating actors involved in service exchange, coordinated by institutions which structure themselves into service ecosystems. And with that simple little framework, we can explain everything that we've been doing in terms of B2B and B2C and C2C and at various levels of analysis. We see exactly the same kinds of things are going on. So it's a powerful, parsimonious framework for understanding value creation.
Wonderful, Steve. I mean, you certainly changed the mindsets of all of us in the services community and in the marketing and beyond. Just a question on what do you attribute your success to and what has made SD Logic so successful?
I think the primary thing is that it seemed to resonate with what a lot of people were trying to say up to that point, had been trying to talk about. In fact, the most common comment I think we got initially after the 2004 JM was, "You said what we've been trying to say for some time." So it got pieces of what lots of people had been saying and tried to pull those together into one cohesive framework. In fact, if you look at the title of the 2004 JM, it was evolving to a new dominant logic. It wasn't kind of Bob's and Steve's idea of a better way to think. It was really trying to capture what was going on anyway and advance it. So I think the fact that it resonated because it came from what people were talking about already. The second thing I think is because it's terribly simple. As I just explained, it's a fairly simple, parsimonious framework with about 5 moving parts, but you can explain all sorts of things. It's terribly accommodative. Can explain a wide range of not only marketing phenomena and marketing related research streams, but we find that it's being picked up in all sorts of other business disciplines and even outside of business in strange places like philosophy and arts and civil engineering, etc.
Yes.
The other reason that it's been successful is because it has been terribly inclusive, or we've tried to be very inclusive of other people, and other people have been receptive. Other scholars have been receptive, particularly the service research community. Both have been instrumental, both in inspiration, in being my original heroes for the ideas from which service dominant logic came, but also then as collaborators for further development since that time.
Absolutely. I mean, coming back to heroes, I mean, there are of course many people in your life and your career. I mean, tell us, who are these heroes? Who are the 2 or 3 people who influenced you most and why?
Well, there are a lot of people that have influenced me and are still influencing me, but to pick 2 or 3, that I'd probably settle in on 3, and interestingly, all of them coincidentally happened to be named Bob. The first one was a guy named Bob Willis. Another part of me that a lot of people don't know is I came from kind of a turbulent, not a bad childhood, but kind of a turbulent one. Parents divorced early, had 2 stepfathers by the time I was a teenager, and left home at 16 just to sort of get out of that atmosphere. Never had a real father figure and never had a brother. And so developed a friendship with a guy named Bob Willis, who was a year older than me in high school. And he sort of invited me into a little loosely knit group that he was part of, a number of guys and gals, and we just did some things together. But he also took me under his wing and taught me some skills, both in dress and social skills, etc. And became kind of a big brother to me, and that lasted through late college, late undergraduate degree, though we remained friends until he died recently. The second Bob is a guy named Bob Hood, who was a professor at the University of Oklahoma in psychology and social psychology. And I discovered him in a class in my junior year, I think. And then I liked it so much in his whole approach to holistic theory, putting things together so they all made sense together instead of a bunch of loose parts, which is the way of a lot of psychology was to me. And so I took a graduate course under him while still an undergraduate, spent some time talking with him. He gave me a research assistantship at the Institute of Group Relations at the University of Oklahoma, got a master's with him, was working on a Ph.D. with him, and had completed coursework, was working on the dissertation, and he died suddenly. And I didn't finish the Ph.D. at that time, but I remember him as being the best educator that I've ever worked with and one of the best theoreticians that I've ever known, and so has been terribly important to my life. Nobody will be surprised at the third Bob, I imagine, who is Bob Lush, who I also kind of met serendipitously. I enrolled at the University of Oklahoma to get a Ph.D. in marketing after this entrepreneurial career. Ran into a guy who had just stepped down as dean of the school, Bob Lush, and didn't have a lot of contact with him at that time. He was really on sabbatical, but taught a class over the course of 2 semesters in marketing theory anyway. Didn't really work with him until about the 3rd year, and decided to do readings under him on distribution and services. And I've been playing with this idea that we're not thinking about service correctly at that time. And that's kind of where we found common ground. I went into him one day and said, you know, I think this is all upside down. Goods are the distribution vehicle for service, and we've been treating it backwards. And he said, I'll be damned, you might have it right. And that kind of started a collaboration. It was first on a paper that I had written for another class, and then developed into eventually what is the 2004 JM. He too was a great thinker. He thought broadly and could cover almost any topic and connect it with another topic, something I've always admired. He liked big ideas and he welcomed thinking big ideas. And so he didn't scoff at me when I walked in and said, I think probably it's all about service, but in fact, helped me develop a career path out of that. And Bob and I think, have somewhere 4 or 5 dozen articles, a number of which have won major awards, and certainly feel fortunate that they've also seem to have some impact. So those are the 3 Bobs. I could go on. I actually have a 4th Bob, but that's probably enough Bobs.
Thank you. That was a wonderful story. Thank you. What a journey. Now, finally, tell us what you're working on right now and what are your plans going forward?
Well, in a nutshell, what I'm working on now is more of the same.
Okay.
Service dominant logic is not finished.
Yeah.
It's not complete. It has a pretty cohesive, coherent narrative of value co-creation, I think, presently. But we still need to drill down on all pieces of those and all pieces of those components and understand a little bit more the sub-processes and how they work. And so that's on an ongoing basis. We're still working on the meta theory. The primary meta theoretical thrust at the moment is the concept of emergence, the idea that phenomena develop from interactions of components that have characteristics that are different from any of the components. relatively simple idea, but fairly difficult to drill down on and fully understand and fully appreciate. So in the simplest form, it's sort of the idea we get wetness by the interaction of hydrogen and oxygen, and that's not a that's not a characteristic of either of the components. If we move that to marketing and marketing related things, I would make the argument that essentially everything that we're really interested in marketing is emergent. Value, innovation, brand communities. These aren't things that we design and build and they happen the way that we engineer them. They happen in ways we could never imagine them, fortunately, because that's where innovation really comes from. So how do we think about emergent properties, systemic dynamic systems, and how these things that we really care about in marketing come out of that emergently, and so that we can understand them better and manage the process, the part that can be manage that better. So that's a big area. 8 of us met. I think it was 8 of us that met in Italy about a year ago and started really talking about this seriously. And we're in the process of turning out a manuscript now, which hopefully will bring it to the forefront in marketing. I guess the other area, Bob and I, about 2017, began really pushing for more mid-range theory. The idea was we had developed something that was fairly cohesive and coherent as a narrative for service-dominant logic. So now can we move that from the meta-theoretical level to more practical levels, both for measurement and for application? And so we're really encouraging more and more mid-range theory. I'm now encouraging more mid-range theory, and have been involved in some of it myself in technological innovation, market innovation, business models, and even recently a paper that I did with a colleague here and a former student on bringing ST logic to sales, rethinking the whole sales function.
Wonderful. This is all terribly exciting. Thank you, Steve. It was an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. And again, my heartiest congratulations to your well-deserved award. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joachim.